Hello, I'm Femi OK.
And I'm Omar Badar.
And I'm Malika Bilal at the Republican National Convention in Cleveland, Ohio. And you're in the stream. Donald Trump has secured the Republican Party's nomination for President of the United States. But not everyone is happy. Is there disunity within the GOP?
The RNC is wrapping up, and many say a deep sense of discord has emanated from the party this week. There have been public shows of disunity on the convention floor and on the stage. The roll call has been disrupted. Speakers have slammed Democratic candidate Hillary Clinton, but refused to say Donald Trump's name. Perhaps the biggest show of discord, though, was on Wednesday night when former candidate Ted Cruz spoke.
If you love our country and love your children as much as I know that you do, stand and speak and vote your conscience. Vote for candidates up and down the ticket who you trust to defend our freedom and to be faithful to the Constitution.
Of course, Trump's campaign has been controversial from the very beginning, leaving many in the party to question whether he's the right person with the right policies for the job. An issue our community has been picking up on, like Neslihan over here, who tweeted in saying, "Is Donald Trump the best available candidate? At this stage, with his remarks, he seems to be dividing instead of unifying the GOP." And we also found this tweet here by Rick Wilson. He's a conservative pundit saying, "Still never Trump. Being the nominee doesn't change the fact that he's a narcissist, sociopath, unprepared to manage a Waffle House." These are pretty harsh words, of course. But for those of you at home, if you want to join this conversation, you can. We're actually live streaming this show right now on Facebook Live. And you can join us there by going to facebook.com/AJStream. And we'll look forward to your comments.
So to help us talk about the friction within the GOP, we're joined by Wendy Lynn Day. She's with Malika in Cleveland, and Wendy is a delegate from Michigan for Ted Cruz. With us right here in our studio, we have Demetrius Snell, a political commentator, and John Filati is a conservative Republican and the former executive director of the Delaware Republican Party. So Malika and Wendy, I was just following the reporting from this last week from the RNC. Amazing, shocking, remarkable, extraordinary. Malika, how would you describe the RNC, and Wendy as well?
Pretty much all of the above. There are some competing messages here. I will say there is an excitement. It's electric. You can kind of feel it behind us, preparations for what's going to happen later on Thursday. So there is excitement, but then there also is discord. We talked a little bit about it in that very intro. There are people saying maybe there's not so much unity because, of course, as you mentioned, Femi, Ted Cruz on Wednesday in his speech, he talked about unity. He said, we need a leader who will unite us all under shared values. But then it was also a non-endorsement of Trump. And so then after that, you heard boos while Cruz supporters cheered. Were you one of those who was cheering?
I was actually on the floor last night, and this is my first convention, so I wasn't really sure what to expect, and it certainly has been an exciting experience. I was one of the delegates who wanted to be able to have a roll call vote on the rules. Monday, we kicked it off with a little controversy and really just wanting those delegates to have their voices heard, and we all know how that turned out. And then, of course, last night we were waiting for the speech to hear what Senator Cruz had to say. And for those of us who've been supportive of Senator Cruz for a long time, most of us were not disappointed. You know, he talked about unifying behind ideas, and I think that was the right message for him to give.
So then what then was behind the cheering and the boos? Did you know that that was going to happen? Did you expect him to endorse Trump?
You know, I think that there's a certain level of just kind of jockeying for position and power, and I'm not sure exactly what was going on behind the scenes, but I think that it's no secret that Trump and Cruz have had kind of an ongoing struggle in that arena for a long time, as they both tried to occupy the conservative, rebel, outsider lane in the presidential primary. So it kind of culminated last night and ended in some fireworks. I find it was astonishing that he walked into thunderous applause, ongoing thunderous applause, and was booed as he left, as he finished his speech about the 9-year-old daughter of a fallen police officer, and was booed as he left the stage. It was quite remarkable to watch.
Wendy, I just want to bring in John here because, yes, John, when you saw the booing, is that a chasm there, right there, for the Republican Party?
There's no question about it. I mean, you know, the purpose of a political convention is to unify the party. It's to bring people together. And one of the ways that happens is by getting the other candidates from the primary election to support the nominee. And I think that the Trump folks and the party members, the delegates that were sitting in the hall, were right to expect an endorsement. It would have been the right thing to do. I think at the end of the day, that's actually going to hurt Senator Cruz.
Well, in all honesty, I don't think it's going to hurt Senator Cruz, because I think a lot of people took what he did and they actually applauded him, such as the people that were inside of the convention, because it goes to show you that the party is split, because many people still don't believe Donald Trump is right for the ticket. They still don't believe him to be a conservative, because a few years ago, he just was screaming about everything that he liked about Obama, and now we're here in 2016, and he's screaming about all the things that he hates that Obama did for the people, such as his health care, the Affordable Health Care Act. He was one of the main people back in the early in the 90s and early 2000s speaking about he wanted to give everyone affordable health care in the country.
Do you think that's because you're on the outside and then Wendy and Malika are on the inside, and there's a different bubble and a different kind of oxygen right there, Malika?
I wonder that, actually, because I'm hearing what Demetrius says, but then, after what Wendy mentioned about the booing when Cruz was finished, Trump tweeted not too long after, I'm reading it on my screen here, he said, other than a small group of people who have suffered massive and embarrassing losses, the party is very united. I'm using his hand signals there. Great love in the arena. Agree?
Yeah, it's huge, right? So Donald Trump has the responsibility as the nominee to unite the party. I think what's changed this experience is that we brought in so many grassroots activists. I was a grassroots activist. This is my first convention. So we don't know. We didn't get the rule book beforehand as to how we're supposed to behave. We thought we paid the money to come here, traveled here, to have our voices heard and to support, eventually support the nominee, but up until then have our voices heard in this process. And if there was another agenda or a way it should have gone, they probably should have told us that before we actually got here. So I think there's nobody who would say this is a typical convention, and I don't see why why the grassroots are in charge of maintaining order.
But Wendy, one of the things that seems to have been a uniting point here is pretty much opposition to Hillary Clinton, but we're finding out that this is not even unanimous. We have tweets here like Ben Ho. He's also a conservative commentator who's saying, right now I would write in Cruz if he were to vote in November. Unless it looks like Trump and Hillary are in a tight race, then I would actually do the unthinkable and vote for Hillary Clinton, saying hashtag I am with her. Wendy, if you don't like what you actually hear from Donald Trump and you don't feel like he's going to be able to unify the party, would you go as far as Ben would go?
No. I think there is a time and a place, for all. I'll tell you what, one of the things that I think has been really illustrated is that we do really embrace free speech. Even though it's messy, even though it doesn't make our show slick and smooth, we embrace free speech and exercise that this week. So I do not slam anybody for wherever they're at in this process, because it's such a strange place for all of us to be. But I think that we have a binary choice. You hear people saying that, Hillary versus Trump. And I think there's a long time until November. But I think it's up to him to unify the party. It wasn't not up to Ted Cruz. If it's up to Ted Cruz, if it's on his shoulders to unify the party, does that mean you're giving away responsibility and power for the party and the unification of our country to someone who may be a better leader? I don't know what the message is there. You can't have it both ways. So really, it's on Donald Trump to unite this party, and tonight is his opportunity to do that.
Omar, it's interesting that tweet you read about whether Hillary Clinton is then the option. I just want to give you just a little bit of color from what our team here in Cleveland has been seeing. If there is anything that unites people, it is opposition to Hillary Clinton. When you go out on the floor of this convention center, you see it behind me, when it is in session and the delegates are there and someone is speaking, you often hear chants of lock her up, and people put their hands like this to indicate handcuffs there. On the streets, there's merchandise. Some of it, frankly, is misogynistic, talking about Hillary Clinton and Trump dominating her, references to Monica Lewinsky and the scandal, of course, for several years ago. So there is a seemingly united view on anyone but Hillary.
And
I believe that's true, and I think, you know, I'm not going to comment on what the vendors independently brought in. Some of it's not something I would take home to my children, but I do believe that, you know, Hillary Clinton, we have watched her have a pattern of being too big to jail, apparently, and not able to face the consequences and face equal application of the law, and that really offends conservatives because that's what we want. We want equality for all people, whether you're a black inner city male or a white rich kid from the suburbs. The law should be applied equally, and when we watch politicians who get away with breaking the law, it's very frustrating.
So Wendy, let me bring in another Republican voice here. John, go ahead. What do you want to add?
You know, I have a slightly different view. This is my 6th convention. I've been involved in 2 presidential races and campaigns at the state and local level for the last almost 30 years. And I think there are a couple points that need to be made. The first is, you know, if the purpose of a convention is to unify people, and we're going to wait until tonight to make that happen, then guess what? We've just wasted a lot of time. The purpose is for everyone to come together and get behind our nominee. And our nominee, whether we like it or we don't like it, is Donald Trump. But I also think that to some degree, there are 2 different conversations going on here. You know, as someone that is a party guy, if you will, you know, I understand that the purpose of the Republican Party is to get a candidate elected that has the letter R next to their name. And this year, that's Donald Trump. And again, we don't have to like it. And I have some significant issues with Donald Trump. And quite frankly, I have some significant issues with our platform. But I'm really concerned that as the party tries over the balance of this week to begin to bring people together, comments from Senator Cruz just simply don't help that at all. I mean, they just simply don't work towards that end of unifying the party. You know, the campaigns are work in phases. The first phase is Iowa, New Hampshire. The second phase is the rest of the primary states. Then you have the convention, which launches you off to the final phase.
Okay,
and
John,
this convention phase.
John, just give me a moment, because I actually have to say goodbye to Wendy and also Malika, because they're going to be off at the RNC for the final night at the RNC. What are you looking forward to most, Malika?
It is definitely electric in here because everyone is preparing for this moment. So we'll see what's going to happen, whether there will be massive protests, massive celebrations, a balloon drop. Looking forward to seeing it all.
All right, so Wendy and Malika, thanks for being part of the stream today. I know you've got to go off in the RNC in Cleveland, so we'll continue the conversation with Omar. Go ahead, Omar.
We actually just got a question through Facebook Live from James over here, who says, it seems to me that no one at the RNC has actually discussed any policy positions. It has been simple rhetoric. Can you find a Republican to ask about policy positions? Demetrius, do you think this is a fair criticism of the rhetoric so far?
That is a fair criticism. That's something that I've been fussing about for the last 3 to 4 days.
Just the last 3 to 4 days?
Well, I mean, you know,
right.
I'm thinking that, okay.
Very calm. You're very zen.
I'm thinking, okay, maybe, you know, once we get to the convention, we'll hear some policy, we'll hear something to get the people going. But it seems like nothing is coming from this convention but rhetoric about locking up Hillary Clinton and things that are futile to what's about to happen that needs to happen after November. The fact that we sit here during the second day and it's make America great. Well, not make America great again, but the fact that we're talking about economics and business inside of on the second day, and the only business that we heard from any of the people on that platform it was 21 mentions of business, 14 mentions of economics.
You were sitting there counting?
It's all, I mean, the statistics are out there. You can, It's basically all over the internet.
Right.
And another problem that we have is that we're lining up behind a man because we dislike the Democratic nominee. How far is that going to get us in this election? Because right now everybody's saying, oh, everybody at the convention, inside the convention halls, are screaming and yelling and they're with him. But we're not talking about the people that's in there. The people that's in there we know are there to support the majority of them. We're talking about the American people outside of the convention, those independents and those voters who haven't decided yet. Those are the people we need to
Let me show you something. Let me share this with you, John, as well. This is from Pearl Bailey. And he says these people might somehow find Trump appealing as a person, but as POTUS, President of the United States, that's stunningly puzzling. Can you explain that?
Well, I think, you know, I think there are a couple of things. And one, I want to address the previous question very quickly,
Sure.
if I could.
Yeah, of course.
The idea that there's no policy being put forward, I absolutely agree with, and I think it's disturbing. You know, we not only have to run against somebody, but we have to run towards something. And the question is, where's the party headed? What are we running towards? And with regards to the tweet, you know, I think there's actually another point there. Folks like Donald Trump, the showman. Folks like Donald Trump on The Apprentice. They like him in terms of casinos and other business. But that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be a good leader when it comes to being the head of the free world. And part of what helps us figure that out is a campaign. A campaign helps us ferret through that. And I think Donald Trump tapped into a level of anger in the American population in the primary that shocked everybody. The problem we face is, without him having put forward solutions to those problems and simply tapping into that anger, it leaves open a lot of space for interpretation. You know, all of those angry voters that went out and supported Donald Trump, whether it was at the polls or whether they stuffed envelopes or what have you, you know, we've got to understand what that anger is about. Because if Trump doesn't go out there and actually put forward an agenda, you know, it could get quite messy as we head into this fall. I mean, 10 weeks is a long time and a lot can happen.
And I think that's probably why a lot of the big time Republicans did not go to either to the convention, or like Ted Cruz didn't even say, I endorse Donald Trump. I'm pretty sure it took Marco Rubio everything in his soul to even endorse him, because
So Marco Rubio was a former candidate.
he's a the former candidate,
Right.
Marco Rubio. It took, I'm pretty sure it took him everything just to endorse this man, because the fact of the matter is, no one knows what Donald Trump is capable of. He's like the former candidate Mitt Romney in 2012, who was a flip-flopper, and nobody really knew what it was that he really wanted.
But there are a lot of people who look at this rhetoric right now and see it as a shift in the GOP more broadly. People like Michael Osterlink over here on Facebook, who says the GOP showed hope with their rhetoric of individual liberty, limited government, free markets, constitutionalism, and the rule of law. It would have become a reality with the Ron Paul revolution of 2008. However, in 2016, the GOP convention has shown the death of liberty within the GOP and the further rise of the authoritarian right. Do you see that as a lasting concerning trend?
That is the whole purpose of conservatism, and that's why I take a step back, because I'm like, that is not what's being spewed right now in the U.S. politics with Donald Trump. Individual liberties, you know, limited government, you know, stuff like that is what true conservatives wanted to see at this convention, and we're not seeing it. We're not seeing the policies that they're going to put in place to tell us, oh, you know, Donald Trump is, well, everybody's speaking on lock Hillary up, lock Hillary up, lock Hillary up. Okay, that's fine, lock Hillary up, but what are we locking her up for, is the question. And then they come with the old Benghazi situation, and it's like, well, a lot of things, that was one situation under the Obama administration. But President Bush, there were 13 embassy bombings.
So it sounds like you're at odds with your own party.
You can pretty much say that, and at this point right now.
Let me just check to see where John is.
Okay.
John, where are you with the Republican Party? Are you in it or are you out of it?
Well, I'm in it. I'm firmly in it.
Yeah.
But there are two things where I have major issues. The first is the party and the platform in particular. You know, I am a gay man and I'm a Republican, and I have significant issues with the language in the Republican platform that deals with the LGBT community. You know, if you were to ask me in any other year, I would basically tell you that I don't care about the platform because most candidates ignore it. Where I have significant issues is that the language in the platform this time around simply doesn't mirror where society is, where America is. It actually works backwards. That's a problem, and it's a big problem. And it's a problem because, again, as a member of the LGBT community, where our community is right now is in the same place that the Republican Party could be taking America. And that is new jobs, lower taxes, a growing economy, and in particular, education reform. You know, the Supreme Court's ruling last year that marriage equality is legal really sets up a new political dynamic that the Republican Party could capitalize on. You know, they seem to be failing to remember that politics is about addition. It's not about subtraction. And it most certainly isn't about division.
John, we got a comment here also from Facebook Live just now that I want you to react to. We have Jack over here who says, I have never been more embarrassed to be an American than now. As an American, I have never been more fearful than now. I believe that people have lost their minds, and I hope the rest of the world realizes that not all of us are like that. Would you tell Jack to hold their horses? It's not really that bad, or do you share some of this concern about how this reflects externally as well?
No, I think I would never say that I'm embarrassed to be an American. I think that as a democracy, things are never going to be perfect, yet America is still the model for the rest of the world. I do think that culturally and politically, America is shifting, and it doesn't happen overnight. Part of a democracy is things get messy sometimes, and they have to work themselves out. And I think that's what you see happening right now. I again am concerned from the standpoint of the Republican Party that we've got some work to do. I mean, we have some real work to do, and some of that's generational, and some of that's cultural.
Well, us as the Republican Party, we have a lot to deal with, and we have a lot to do, especially when it comes to diversity in our party. The fact that there are only, I think it's about 18 delegates at this convention, 18 black delegates at this convention is a problem. That was the lowest number in the history of the Republican convention, because I can seriously say, as a person whose family has been Republican since the 1800s, and actually some of them that died being Republicans for the Republican Party, that's a big issue for me. Is that what's happening in America is that America is becoming a very different place than it was in the 1900s.
Can you fix what's happening to the GOP right now?
You can fix it. It can easily be fixed.
How?
The only thing that you really have to do is you have to put those people in place that you have to show the diversity in the Republican Party.
Where
you have to
where
take
will you find that?
There's plenty of people in the Republican Party who are of the minority. The problem is that they're being pushed out by this wave of.
All right, so you say you can fix the GOP by bringing in minorities. John, you say what?
I say the same thing, but I guess to my point is there are millions of Americans, and whether it is part of the context of the racial divide, whether it's part of the ethnic divide, or again, in my case, a question of the LGBT community, there are millions of people that want to be Republicans that will say to me over and over again when I'm doing work on behalf of the party, I really want to be a Republican. I agree with you guys on 99% of the issue, but your rhetoric on certain issues is so destructive and so negative that I just can't bring myself there. And I think what has to happen is those folks that want to be Republican, that just can't see their way past some of that rhetoric, need to come back to the party, and they need to run for office. And they need to run for local party positions. They need to run for state level positions, and they need to become part of the conversation. There are two ways to get a seat at the table. Either you're invited in, or you walk into the room and you take a seat.
John, I do want you to react to an image that we have here on my screen. It was tweeted by John Stahl over here saying, last chance to get on board for the Never Trump types. You have the Never Trumps are drowning, Hillary is the shark, and you have Trump here in a boat trying to save them. If this election happens to be in the favor of Trump, do you think the anti-Trump crowd would have a lot to lose politically?
I think they do. But the question becomes, how is Trump going to frame that? What Trump, and again, I'm going to speak from the standpoint of LGBT issues, he has a history there of being supportive of the community, yet he had a much different tone in the primary. Trump could very easily run on the message that I am trying to save Republicans from the Republican Party. And if he does that and he's successful, I think he sets himself up for a very long 4 years. But it's something that he can actually get accomplished.
Right. I think the issue has this election has been his rhetoric, because like I told someone, Trump hasn't always been like this. Trump has been he's been LGBTQ inclusive. He's been a Democrat. He's been a Democrat. He was minority inclusive. He hires a lot of African Americans. So we know that it's just the rhetoric that he brings out.
Let's just cut to the chase here. Do you know what you're voting in November?
Right now, I'm waiting. There's a third party candidate by the name of Gary Johnson, who is a former Republican. He's now on the Libertarian ticket. I'm looking at him right now, so I'm not really sure where I'm going to.
All right, let me just check in with John. John, do you know what you're voting in November?
I have not made a decision yet, and in large part, I need to wait. I need to wait and see if Donald Trump will wrap his arms around what his real positions are and his real feelings are on some of these issues, and hold them tight and run on them.
You've been hearing from Republicans in today's programme, from John Fluharty, Demetrius Schnell, Wendy Linday. Also, Malika Bilal was out there at the INC in Cleveland, and you and the community, thank you so much for being part of this programme. We will continue our conversation online using #AJStream. Take care, everybody.